ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So this story is only ridiculous because of the location. This ghost story takes place at an art campus that used to be a tuberculosis hospital that is behind Casa Bonita. Yes, this Casa Bonita. This ghost story involves a murder, unrequited love, and a violin. So sit down and buckle up. First, some history. The Jewish Consumptive Relief Society was a tuberculosis hospital that was open from 1912 to I think 1979. It then became a cancer research facility, and then it became an art college. I attended the art college and then worked at the art college, so I was there for about 5 years. And everybody had ghost stories on the campus, and it's very reasonable. There were so many people that passed away from the tuberculosis illness on that campus, and the facility was open for a really long time, so it definitely makes sense that the place is haunted as all get out. One particular grisly event, however, made state news, and this is the particular ghost that I find the most interesting. This is Isidore, or sometimes he would write his name as Isaac, depending on the document that you look at, and Isidore was a child prodigy at the violin. He was very good, and when he got tuberculosis, it absolutely devastated him. It ruined his career, and he knew that there was going to be a huge chance that he was going to die. And this was in the year 1920, so tuberculosis cures were nowhere near as good as they are now, and he went to the only place that he thought that maybe he would have a chance. That place was the JCRS. The JCRS was known for being the best tuberculosis treatment center in the United States at the time, and he hoped that the Rocky Mountain air and the facility would be able to cure him of his illness, and it did. To some extent, the hospital provided such good care that he was able to go into remission several times during his treatment at the facility. He was able to leave the facility, and then when it got worse, he would come back. So all in all, he had a pretty good chance that he was going to survive. This is Bessie. She's absolutely gorgeous, and she was a nurse in World War I. When she returned to the States, she unfortunately contracted the Spanish flu, which completely knocked her off of her feet. And she sought treatment at the JCRS for a different type of illness. So she sought treatment for that Spanish flu. She was cured. And then after she got done, they asked her, hey, do you want to work for us? And she said, I would be absolutely delighted. Within 10 months of her working at the JCRS, she had already become the head nurse. So Bessie and Isaac cross paths a lot because Bessie is treating Isaac's tuberculosis every time he comes back to the JCRS. And he even says things like, you know, if it weren't for you, I would be dead. I wouldn't be here. And she would always say things like, you know, it's my duty. It's my duty as a nurse. You know, I'm trying to use the gifts that I have been given to make a difference in the lives of people. He wanted to become romantically involved with his nurse. She didn't think that that was professional. Isaac proposed several times to Bessie. She said no every time. And he just really couldn't sit with no for an answer, and it made him very desperate and very upset. At some point in 1920, he was discharged from the hospital for what would be the last time. They said, you're going to get better. You're probably going to be fine. And he was a little devastated because he wanted Bessie to accept his proposal. He wanted to be together. And so he thought, I'm going to go buy a ring. And if for whatever reason I end up back in this hospital, I'm going to propose one last time and we'll see if she'll take it. He ended up having to go back to the JCRS because unfortunately his tuberculosis took a turn for the worse. And it got really, really bad this time. Like really bad. Like nothing he had ever seen. He came back to the hospital and he did what he said he was going to do. He got down on one knee outside of what is now the Rotunda building on the art campus and by a tree. There's a very specific tree, and he proposed. And she said the same thing that she said every single time, and that the answer was no. And it was at that point that he pulled out a weapon that he had brought onto the campus illegally. They didn't know that he had it, and he ended her life by discharging the weapon into her abdomen several times. They were on a hospital campus, so they tried to rush her to the emergency operating room to save her life, and they couldn't. She had probably died instantaneously, and that was it. And unfortunately, Isaac was never tried for the crime because he died of tuberculosis in the prison while he was being detained. So the story is very tragic, and a lot of the people who attend the school or spend enough time on campus often say that they can see Bessie there wandering around the campus because she still wants to do her job. She still wants to help people. And so they'll say that they'll see a woman in a white nurse's uniform standing underneath that tree or walking around campus. So she's very famous. I don't think anybody ever sees Isaac. I think he's moved on. But yeah, that all happens behind Casa Bonita, so take that as you will. I have plenty of my own personal ghost stories from being on that campus, so if anybody wants to hear it, let me know in the comments, and maybe I will make a follow-up video about the spooky things that I have personally seen while working at the former JCRS.